Chapter 161 Pissed off Uchiha Makoto. Lee Yi returned home. Uchiha Makoto is sitting on the sofa waiting. Like a little daughter-in-law waiting for her husband to come back. Lee Yi opened the door and asked with a smile, "Wait for me." Uchiha Makoto didn't turn his head, and said coldly, "What do you think?" The voice is very indifferent. Lee Yi smiled. He knew that Uchiha Makoto must still be mad at him. After all, despite her objection, he did something at risk. "Look, am I all right?" Lee Yi walked in front of Uchiha Makoto, turned around and said with a smile. The most terrifying thing about Orochimaru-sama is not his strength, but his research. Uchiha Makoto raised his head. Yuhi looked at Lee Yi, and said, "Last year, Orochimaru-sama researched a thing that can be attached to a person's body and provide powerful power for a short period of time, but this kind of the side effects of the thing are extremely great, so it was stopped by Hokage-sama." Quote. Lee Yi asked with a smile, "Are you afraid that Orochimaru left something like this on me?" Uchiha Makoto nodded with a small mouth. "It's okay, my eyes have never left Orochimaru's body. The two of us have no physical contact at all. How could he leave something on my body?" Lee Yi smiled and shook his head. "You're still laughing. It's not like you don't know the strength of Lord Orochimaru. Even the leader of the Rain Country, Hanzo of the Salamander, admires him." Uchiha Makoto said, "If he really wants to leave something unknown in you, how can you find out? Don't think I'm so bad, okay, I'm actually very strong." Lee Yi showed off his arched biceps. Turned over a Byakugan again and said, "Genin, in the ninja world, there are many. But the elite Jonin, in the ninja world, the number will not exceed 1,000. The strength gap between you and Orochimaru-sama is really too big." "Too big?" Lee Yi nodded. "What do you nod?" Uchiha Makoto asked. "I agree with what you said." Lee Yi explained, "You are right, the strength gap between me and Orochimaru is indeed huge at present. If you know that, why would you do such a silly thing?" Uchiha Makoto pouted, his face even more dissatisfied. Lee Yi didn't want to explain to her. He could never say that I came from the earth, and I know the details of Orochimaru. Even if he planted a spell on me, I would not be afraid. His spell seal is immature and has no use to me in the slightest. Besides, I still have a system, I am the host of the system, not the host of Orochimaru. How, do you Orochimaru still want to compare with the Supreme Infinite Evolution System? Is there any comparison? To put it nasty, you Orochimaru are a fart. This is the confidence and reason why Lee dared to talk to Orochimaru alone. Actually, Lee Yi didn't know, just now, Orochimaru really wanted to attack him. However, Lee Yi's Nine Dragons dominance technique protected him. Nine Dragons Tyrant Body Art can automatically protect the master, it senses danger, so it automatically inspires. However, Orochimaru's senses were quite sharp, and he immediately retracted his hand when he sensed something was wrong. Otherwise, if his palm touches the surface of Lee Yi's body, it will definitely touch the Nine Dragons Tyrant Body Art. At that time, with the sound of the dragon's roar resounding throughout the Konoha village, Orochimaru's fingers will be directly disabled. Of course, even if there is no Nine Dragons Tyrant Body Art, the Infinite Evolution System will inform in advance. So, no matter what, Orochimaru couldn't secretly attack Lee Yi. Therefore, Lee Yi has the confidence, not out of thin air. Lee Yi is a very cautious person. No matter what he does, he will do it after thinking about it, and then make a decision. However, he didn't want to explain too much to Uchiha Makoto, so he changed the subject and asked, "Are you still training tonight?" "No more training." Uchiha Makoto seemed to be still pissed off, folded his arms, put his head against his head, and said angrily. Instead of comforting her, Lee Yi nodded and said, "Well, I'm going to bed now, so you should go to bed too." After speaking, Lee Yi lay down on the sofa opposite. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Makoto is even more embarrassed. She was angry with only one purpose, and that was to hear Li Yi's confession. He can't take risks like this alone anymore. However, she did not expect that Li Yi would be so lacking in vision. If you admit your mistake, I won't be angry. Hurry up and admit your mistake. Uchiha Makoto sat on the sofa opposite Li Yi, staring at Li Yi. However, after a while, Li Yi started snoring. He actually fell asleep. Uchiha Makoto is so angry. Humph. And, Uchiha Makoto snorted vigorously. With the strength to wake Li Yi, he stood up abruptly, stomped his feet hard and walked away. However, until Uchiha Makoto came to the door, Li Yi was still snoring, and there was no sign of waking up. Uchiha Makoto got even more angry and slammed the door shut. However, Li Yi was still not woken up. After about half an hour that Uchiha Makoto was already asleep, Li Yi suddenly stopped snoring and slowly opened his eyes. Silly girl. He sat up and shook his head with a wry smile. He knew that Uchiha Makoto also cared about him. However, he couldn't explain much to Uchiha Makoto. As a scumbag man in the 21st century, Li Yi knows a lot about women's temperament. He knew that if there were too many explanations, it would only make things more confusing. So, it is better not to explain. Uchiha Makoto is very angry now, but if she ignores her words, maybe she will be fine tomorrow morning. If you ignore her now, then, maybe even more conflicts will break out. Therefore, no explanation is the biggest explanation. Words are better than words. Li Yi has always been very measured when doing things. Think no more. Li Yi came back to his senses, stretched his waist, and muttered, "It's time to practice the 9 Dragons Domination Technique." Today, Li Yi's 9 Dragons Dominance Technique is in the realm of 0 dragons. Although there is already a dragon in the body, that is also the mercy of the system. To put it a bit harsher, send beggars. Therefore, Li Yi wants to elevate the realm of the 9 Dragons Domination Technique to the real Yilong. Because there is already a dragon in his body, Li Yi only needs to practice for one night to reach the real state of a dragon. Otherwise, if he practiced step by step, with Li Yi's aptitude, it would take at least half a year to reach Yilong. At least. No longer grumbling, Li Yi took a deep breath, sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and began to practice. The reason why he is sitting on the ground, not on the sofa, is because there are dragon veins under the earth, and Li Yi wants to absorb the energy of the dragon veins. The first 6 dragon realms need to absorb the energy of the dragon veins of the earth. In the realm of the latter 3 dragons, it is necessary to absorb the energy of the real dragon. Chapter 162-What did he do? In the blink of an eye, the night passed by. The next day the sun shines through the window, hitting Li Yi's face. Li Yi's eyelids, which had been closed for a night, suddenly began to twitch. Then, he opened his eyes. Boom. It seems that there are 2 golden lights bursting out from Li Yi's eyes. At the same time, the loud dragon roar sounded from Li Yi's body. Li Yi immediately shouted in his heart, "Don't bark." Suddenly, the sound of dragon roar disappeared. Li Yi's eyes gradually dimmed. Everything is back to normal. Li Yi glanced at the door of Uchiha Makoto's bedroom. There was no sign that the door had been opened. Apparently, Uchiha Makoto didn't come out all night. This little girl has no nocturia. The kidney function is really good. Li Yi secretly praised. Afterwards, Li Yi stood up, moved his shoulders, and made a crackling sound. A violent aura emanated from his body, turning into a circle of air waves visible to the naked eye, spreading out under the sun's rays. That's right, now he has reached the real dragon realm. It's comfortable. After moving his body, Li Yi let out a groaning to the sky. Suddenly, Li Yi frowned. Because he smelled a stench and felt his body was sticky. Immediately looked down. However, he found that his body was actually covered by a layer of black oil stains. Li Yi walked over to the mirror. Only then did he discover that his entire body, including his face and hair, was covered with black oil stains. And that disgusting stench emanated from this black oil stain. Li Yi immediately pinched his nose with his left hand, fanned with his right hand, and made a sharp sound from his mouth, scolding, "Damn, there are so many dirty things in my body." Without any hesitation, Li Yi rushed into the bathroom immediately. He's going to take a shower. Just as Li Yi was taking a shower, the door to Uchiha Makoto's bedroom was opened. She came out sleepy. Seeing that Li Yi was not sleeping, but taking a bath, Uchiha Makoto blinked. What happened? Why is he taking a shower? Does anyone take a shower in the morning? Suddenly, Uchiha Makoto wrinkled his nose. Because she smelled a strange smell. Following the taste, Uchiha Makoto's eyes finally landed on a pool of black stains. What is it? Uchiha Makoto squatted down, stretched out his right index finger, and touched it. A very special feeling, along the fingertips, into the nerves. Sticky, soft, hot, and a peculiar smell. Suddenly, Uchiha Makoto's expression was shocked, and his heartbeat accelerated violently, as if he had thought of something. Uchiha Makoto glanced at the bathroom again. Li Yi is still taking a shower. Uchiha Makoto suddenly realized. He must have done that unspeakable thing, so he will take a shower now. Thinking of this possibility, Uchiha Makoto hurried Yuhi on his cheeks, looked at the bathroom, and said in his heart, "I thought he was a man without any hope, but I didn't expect that he even had this kind of hope. Men are all the same, they are all animals that think about the bottom of the body." Perhaps thinking of some inappropriate scenario, Uchiha Makoto clutched at his heartbeat racing violently. Finally, under her shy, flickering gaze, the bathroom door was opened, and Li Yi, who was wearing only a pair of big pants, strode out. Chapter 163_Suspect. There was a little problem in the last chapter, so I can't read it for the time being. The staff is working hard to revise it. Readers, please be safe. After getting dressed, Li Yi found that Uchiha Makoto looked at him with a strange look. Li Yi asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Uchiha Makoto's cheek flushed Yuhi, and turned his head hastily, no longer looking at Li Yi. Li Yiquan pretended that Uchiha Makoto was still angry with him last night, so he changed the subject and asked, "Where are we going to eat?" "Just go out for a meal." Uchiha Makoto replied. "Okay." Li Yi nodded. So, the two went out together. There are many breakfast places in Konoha village. Buying a few cakes and filling their stomachs casually, Uchiha Makoto and Li Yi did not go directly to the training grounds, but went to the medical department. In the ward, Ayame is awake. Seeing Li Yi and Uchiha Makoto, Ayame's pale faces showed a smile and said, "Brother Li Yi, Sister Makoto, are you here?" "Yeah, how do you feel about your body?" Uchiha Makoto immediately walked to Ayame's side, sat on the bed, and asked gently. "Although my body still has no strength, it is already healed." With that, Ayame wanted to sit up. Uchiha Makoto immediately stopped. "Just lie down, your body has just recovered, so don't sit up." Then, well. Ayame nodded in agreement. Uchiha Makoto used chakra again to detect Ayame's body. Confirming that Ayame was indeed all right, Uchiha Makoto and Li Yi said a few more words before saying goodbye and leaving. On the way, Uchiha Makoto asked very curiously, "Li Yi, what method did Orochimaru-sama use?" "You know, no one in the medical department can treat Ayame's disease. However, it took Orochimaru just over an hour to rescue Ayame, who was in critical condition at the time." So, Uchiha Makoto was very curious, what method did Orochimaru use? However, Li Yi's answer surprised Uchiha Makoto. "It's not Orochimaru's credit, it's Tsunade's." Li Yi shook his head lightly. "Master Tsunade." Uchiha Makoto was stunned. "How is this possible? Tsunade-sama has no fixed place, and she hasn't come back yet. How could it be her? Suddenly, Uchiha Makoto's voice stopped abruptly. Because she remembered Orochimaru's relationship with Tsunade. Brothers and sisters. Others don't know where Tsunade is now, but not necessarily Orochimaru. So it's Tsunade-sama. Uchiha Makoto suddenly realized. Tsunade-sama's medical skills are among the best in the entire ninja world. For diseases that cannot be cured or cured by others, if you hand them over to Tsunade-sama, maybe there will be a chance of life. Expected of Mr. Tsunade. In Uchiha Makoto's beautiful eyes, there is a flash of adoration. But the next moment, Uchiha Makoto seemed to have thought of something, and turned his head to look at Lee Yi. Because she felt that Lee Yi seemed to have little respect for Tsunade. Others are called Tsunade, they have to add the word, adult, to show respect. Lee Yi is better, just call him his original name. Could it be that he and Tsunade knew each other well and knew each other well, so he could speak so casually? Thinking of this, Uchiha Makoto's heart clenched. Uzumaki Kushina once told her that Tsunade likes Lee Yi. At the time, Uchiha Makoto was very unconvinced. Until now, she didn't believe it. Because it's so incredible. Tsunade and Lee Yi, whether it is status or power, they are the same heaven and earth, and there is no comparability in the slightest. How could they possibly know each other? Even if they knew each other, how could Tsunade like Lee Yi? What a joke. However, Lee Yi calling Tsunade's name so casually made Uchiha Makoto suspicious. However, Uchiha Makoto thought again that Tsunade not only disrespected Tsunade, he seemed to disrespect Orochimaru even more. He called Tsunade's name, his tone was very gentle, as if there was a hint of tenderness. When he called Orochimaru's name, there was a trace of disdain in his tone. I'll just say, how could he know Tsunade-sama? His tone must be due to his personality. Uchiha Makoto suddenly realized, his right hand clenched his fist and smashed it lightly on the palm of his left hand, with an expression of, I understand everything. What do you think? Lee Yi had already walked more than 10 meters in front. He turned his head and looked at the beautiful woman behind him who was standing still and his face was constantly changing. He frowned slightly and asked. Uchiha Makoto turned around and shook his head hastily. No, I didn't think of anything. After speaking, Uchiha Makoto breathed a sigh of relief, burst into a sweet smile, and quickly followed Lee Yi. Lee Yi suddenly said, Ayame's disease did not occur naturally. Not natural hair. Uchiha Makoto blinked his beautiful eyes, artificial. Lee Yi nodded. Go to bed with Lexus. Uchiha Makoto said these 4 words directly. I had doubts about this guy before, but no. Lee Yi shook his head, then paused word by word and whispered, the land of water. Uchiha Makoto's pupils shrank. Is it the land of water again? Last time we attacked Konoha village, killing nearly 20 people in Konoha village, was the land of water. And now, the country of water has put the disease in Konoha village again. What are they trying to do? Do you really want to start a war? How many years have passed since the Second Ninja World War? Why don't they yearn for peace instead of starting a war? What the hell were they thinking? There's something wrong with your brain. At this moment, Uchiha Makoto just wanted to yell. Lee Yi asked again, I heard that Sarutobi Hiruzen recently signed an agreement with the Land of Water. Do you know what the agreement is? Uchiha Makoto shook his head. I don't know, but my father probably knows. Lee Yi nodded. Uchiha Makoto's father, the current leader of the Uchiha clan, is not only powerful, but also has a high position in Konoha village. Therefore, he can know secrets that many people do not know. However, my father is not at home all day, and I can't see him. If I have a chance to see him, I will definitely ask about the situation. Uchiha Makoto said. Good. Lee Yi nodded, suddenly changed the conversation, and whispered, I suspect that this disease in the land of water has swept many people, but Ayame is not a ninja, so he will get sick first. As soon as these words came out, Uchiha Mikoto's face suddenly changed. She stared at Li Yi with her beautiful eyes and asked, "What do you mean?" Li Yi nodded and said in a low voice, "Although ninjas have chakras in their bodies, it is still a matter of two whether they can withstand this disease. If they can't bear it, then they will be on the verge of dying like Ayame last night. Even if they can hold it, their bodies will become extremely weak. At that time, the overall strength of Konoha village will fall to its lowest point. And that's when the enemy country takes over Konoha village. The best time." Chapter 164 Li Yi's Guess. Hearing Li Yi's words, Uchiha Mikoto didn't realize it. If it's true as Li Yi said, isn't Konoha village dangerous? No, this matter must be reported to Lord Hokage as soon as possible. So, without the slightest hesitation, Uchiha Mikoto turned around immediately. Li Yi directly took her little hand and asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to talk to Lord Hokage about this," Uchiha Mikoto said. "Just words. This matter is about the safety of every citizen of our Konoha village, and it is more about the future of our Konoha village. I, Uchiha Mikoto, can't ignore it. Fuck you." Li Yi directly turned to Byakugan and cursed angrily. Uchiha Mikoto choked. "Li Yi is scolding me. Did he scold me? Why does he scold me? What am I did wrong?" Uchiha Mikoto suddenly felt a sense of grievance, and looked at Li Yi with a small mouth. Li Yi turned over Byakugan and said, "Sarutobi Hiruzen is not stupid. He definitely knows what we know. We can guess things, and he can also guess them. Then why is Lord Hokage?" Uchiha Mikoto opened his small mouth with a puzzled look on his face. "Who knows what he thinks?" Li Yi shrugged, but then changed the conversation. "But, as far as I know, Sarutobi Hiruzen is a very responsible person, and he won't watch anything happen in Konoha village." "Really?" Uchiha Mikoto blinked her beautiful eyes with a cute look on her face. "I don't know if it's true or not, it's just my guess." Li Yi turned to Byakugan and said, "Are you guessing?" Uchiha Mikoto squinted his eyes slightly, his eyes flickering with light, obviously thinking about this. Li Yi said no more. In fact, according to his understanding, although Sarutobi Hiruzen is a good Hokage, he also has drawbacks. That is inhumane. In the original book of Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen indirectly killed many people. For example, Hatake Kakashi's father, the man called Konoha White Fang, was forced to death. Although he wasn't directly forced to death by Sarutobi Hiruzen, he couldn't get rid of it. Sarutobi Hiruzen could stand up and say a word for Konoha White Fang at that time. Konoha White Fang would not commit suicide, and Konoha village would not waste such a strong fighting force in vain. In Li Yi's cognition, Sarutobi Hiruzen is such a person, sacrificing a small number of people in exchange for a greater victory. Of course, this is not his fault. Because, ninja, you have to act according to the task honestly. No matter what happens, even if relatives and friends die in front of him, the ninja must continue to carry out the mission. Ninja, you have to be unreasonable. This is the concept that now spreads throughout the Konoha village. In the original Hokage, after Tsunade came to power, this concept gradually changed. But now, this inhumane concept is deeply ingrained. Therefore, Li Yi guessed, did Sarutobi Hiruzen make any plan, so that Sarutobi Hiruzen planned to sacrifice a small number of people for this plan to be implemented smoothly and successfully? Uchiha Mikoto said suddenly, since Tsunade-sama has invented a drug to treat this disease, then this disease should not be a problem, right? Li Yi shook his head. To treat this disease, not only Tsunade's medicine is needed, but also an extremely huge chakra. Orochimaru's chakra is so huge, and it took more than an hour to pull Ayame back from the gate of hell. How many people like Orochimaru are there in the entire Konoha village? Hearing this, Uchiha Makoto's beautiful eyes shrank slightly again. Li Yi added, however, I guess that Tsunade should be improving this medicine now. Forget it, let's just wait and see, and trust our senior management in Konoha village. Uchiha Makoto didn't think about it anymore, and nodded lightly. There is always a solution to a problem. Their Konoha village has been established for so many years, what storms have never been seen? A mere sickness in a country of water, could it be enough to bring them down? Dream. So, the two started training. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, dusk falls. Mountain, and the sunset will dye the clouds through Yuhi, which is particularly dazzling. Li Yi lay on the ground, exhausted. Uchiha Makoto stood beside Li Yi, frowned and asked, "What's wrong with you? Why do I feel like you're out of shape today?" Hearing this, Li Yi's heart froze slightly. This little girl's insight is really keen. That's right, as Uchiha Makoto said, he is indeed not in the state today. Because whether he was running, or jumping long and jumping high frogs, he was doing two things with one heart, practicing Kowloon hegemony. The cultivation method for the 1st to 6th floors of 9 Dragon Hegemony Body Art is very simple, that is to absorb the energy of the dragon veins under the earth. As long as Li Yi stands on the ground, he can absorb the chi of the dragon vein. Li Yi does two things is because he found that when he is exercising, the cultivation speed of Kowloon Hegemony Body Art is faster. Moreover, the more vigorously he exercised, the faster he practiced. Therefore, while exercising with all his might, he practiced the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art. Under the dual purpose, Li Yi is of course not in the state. However, Li Yi didn't intend to explain so much to Uchiha Makoto, so he shook his head and said, "I don't know why, maybe it's because of my physical discomfort. Not feeling well." Uchiha Makoto's brows was slightly raised, as if thinking of something, and there was a fascination yuhi on his cheeks. "What's wrong?" Seeing that Uchiha Makoto's expression was a little uncomfortable, Li Yi asked curiously. "No, nothing." Uchiha Makoto shook his head hastily, and glanced at Li Yi's crotch involuntarily. She thought about what had happened this morning. She once heard Uzumaki Kushina say that after a man does that, he will be out of state all day. No wonder Li Yi is out of shape today. I see. Uchiha Makoto suddenly realized. Looking at Uchiha Makoto's, I understand it all, look, and his cheeks are getting more and more yuhi. Li Yi blinked. What is this girl thinking? You're not thinking about anything nasty, are you? Impossible, this girl is very pure, she doesn't know anything about men and women. Looks like I'm dirty. Li Yi laughed at himself. Uchiha Makoto stood on the ground, his little hands covered his thumping heart, and he didn't know what picture appeared in his mind. His cheeks became hotter and more yuhi, and those eyes kept staring at Li Yi. Department times. Li Yi regained some strength, stood up, and said, "Let's go." Uchiha Makoto trembled all over, and hurriedly came back to his senses, with a hint of panic on his face. "Oh, okay." Li Yi gave Uchiha Makoto a strange look. What happened to this girl? Why is it so strange? But Li Yi didn't think much about it, took a step, and left slowly. Chapter 165-Missing a Wife. Tonight, Uchiha Makoto is making new plans. The exercise plan she made for Li Yi is divided into 4 stages. Now, Li Yi has completed the 2nd stage. The 3rd phase begins tomorrow. Li Yi can clearly feel that his strength has skyrocketed by leaps and bounds. After taking a shower, Li Yi sat on the floor, closed his eyes, and practiced the 9 Dragons Hegemony technique. A trace of power invisible to the naked eye flew out from under the ground and entered Li Yi's body. From the outside, Li Yi is meditating. However, if you take off Li Yi's clothes, you will be surprised to see that there is a little black oil stain on the surface of Li Yi's body. And over time, this black oil stain is getting more and more. A faint stench emanated from Li Yi's body, spreading throughout the room. Time passed by minute. Crunch. Uchiha Makoto pushed open the door and walked out. She had an elated look on her face and wanted to share her plan with Li Yi. Suddenly, her nose wrinkled and she said, "Why does it smell like that again?" Immediately turned his head and looked at Li Yi. However, Li Yi was sitting on the ground meditating. Uchiha Makoto didn't ask any further questions, but first opened the window to ventilate. Then, she walked in front of Li Yi. Until now, she was finally sure that the faint stench floating in the whole house came from Li Yi. Did this guy do that again? At this moment, a guess suddenly rose in Uchiha Makoto's heart. Her brows twitched tightly because of this. Although she didn't know how it felt, she knew that it was not a good thing. Once you do too much, people will fall. Uchiha Makoto doesn't want to see Li Yi fall. However, she didn't know what to say. It's too private after all. See through and not say through, only to understand cannot be expressed in words. It would be really embarrassing to say it. However, she couldn't help but say it. She can't just watch Li Yi step by step into the abyss of depravity. Therefore, her complexion is extremely complicated, the light in her eyes is constantly shining, and her face also shows an expression of uncertainty. However, just when Uchiha Makoto's face was extremely complicated, Li Yi's eyelids suddenly blinked slightly, and then those eyes slowly opened. Seeing Uchiha Makoto in front of him with a sad face, Li Yi asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Uchiha Makoto sighed softly and shook his head. "As long as you're not a fool, you can see that she's lying." However, Li Yi didn't ask much, but said directly, "Are we training or sleeping?" Familiarize yourself with your training schedule for tomorrow, then practice your spatial transfer skills, and finally sleep. Uchiha Makoto sighed again and replied. Uchiha Makoto sighed too much, and the aroma in his mouth fell on Li Yi's face. No bad breath, very fragrant. Li Yi frowned slightly. What happened to this girl? Why so frowning? Is there something wrong with her? However, since Uchiha Makoto didn't take the initiative to say it, he didn't plan to take the initiative to ask. After all, he's not the Madonna who likes to meddle in his own business. Even if you can't manage yourself, you still want to manage others. How can it be so? So, next, Uchiha Makoto started taking Li Yi to get acquainted with tomorrow's exercise plan. The two sat side by side, very close. And the two of them are very thin, and many parts are. However, neither of them had any dirty thoughts. Remember? Uchiha Makoto asked. Remember? Li Yi nodded. Repeat. Uchiha Makoto ordered. Okay. Li Yi nodded. I will run 21,000 meters tomorrow morning. The first 1,000-meter run should not exceed 2 minutes, and the last 1,000-meter run should not exceed 2.5 minutes. While running, there are also 8 groups of frog leaps, and the number of frog leaps in each group is. Li Yi spoke eloquently. Uchiha Makoto nodded with satisfaction. Okay, in this case, I won't need to be with you tomorrow morning. What are you going to do in the morning? Li Yi asked curiously. Uchiha Makoto's cheek was Yuhi, and then he shook his head sharply. No, nothing, just go home and deal with the affairs of the clan. Ghost letter. However, Li Yi didn't ask too much. Okay. Then, under the supervision of Uchiha Makoto, Li Yi began to practice space transfer. Late at night. Uchiha Makoto is already asleep. Li Yi woke up alone, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began to practice Kowloon hegemony body art. Time flies. The blink of an eye, the light of the bloody Yuhi of the rising sun the next day passed through the window and hit Li Yi's face. After the two of them had breakfast, they parted ways and went their separate ways. Konoha Village small tea house. 2 women are sitting opposite each other. The faces are very serious. A woman is wearing a long dress. Her hair that was originally loose has now been tied into a ponytail. There are two long strands of hair in front of her forehead, which are parted in the middle. Pure but not charming beauty. This woman is Uchiha Makoto. Her eyes are not without worry, obviously she is very worried. On the opposite side of Uchiha Makoto is a Yuhi-haired woman. Her beauty is no less than that of Uchiha Makoto, and the most iconic part of her body is the long Yuhi-colored shawl-like hair like Yuhi peppers. Moreover, her temperament is completely different from Uchiha Makoto. Uchiha Makoto is gentle like water, giving people a kind, generous and considerate temperament. And every behavior of this Yuhi-haired woman can make people feel her abundant and overflowing youthful vitality, as if every organ in her body is exuding vigorous vitality. She is Uchiha Makoto's best friend, Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina took a sip of hot tea and said in a deep voice, "Well, this is indeed a problem. He is not young, and it is reasonable to say that he has a wife, but he has not yet had a woman to accompany him, so it is only natural to do such a thing." Quote. Then what to do? I can't just watch him fall, can I? Uchiha Makoto asked anxiously. That's right, the private matter that Uchiha Makoto said to Lee last night is exactly this. She didn't want to watch Lee fall down. But she didn't know what to say. Therefore, she can only turn to the experienced Uzumaki Kushina for help. Makoto, don't worry. According to the frequency you said, he does have some problems, but it's not a big problem. Uzumaki Kushina lightly patted Uchiha Makoto's smooth, jade-like hand, shook his head and comforted. The same sentence. He lacks a wife right now. If someone is willing to be his wife, then no matter what the problem can be solved. Chapter 166-Evolve the Body. Uzumaki Kushina said a lot. Uchiha Makoto nodded vigorously and listened carefully. Although the voices of the two beauties were not loud, and the conversation was not heard by others, but because the two women were so beautiful, they attracted many admirers. One of the men who liked Uzumaki Kushina walked up to her. Yuhi said with a face, "Kushina, are you free tonight? I can invite you to dinner." "Go away." Uzumaki Kushina didn't turn his head, and cursed lightly. Then continued talking to Uchiha Makoto. The man left dejectedly, as if he had lost his soul. A man who liked Uchiha Makoto walked up to Uchiha Makoto and said with a smile, "Makoto, is there anything I can help you with?" "No." Uchiha Makoto was very gentle, shook his head gently, looked at the tall and handsome man in front of him, and said, "Also, I already have someone I like. I hope you won't talk to me again except for tasks in the future." "Ah, is it Brother Fugaku?" "Sure enough, only Brother Fugaku can match you with such a beautiful woman as Sister Makoto." The man was disappointed, sighed, and turned to leave. Uchiha Makoto laughed without saying a word. But in her heart, she said, how could it be Uchiha Fugaku? The two continued to talk. Although they were disturbed, from time to time, the two were not angry. After all, they have experienced this kind of thing a lot. Meanwhile, Lee is running on the training ground. When Uchiha Makoto is not around, he is even more arbitrary, and has three uses. While exercising, while cultivating the Kowloon hegemony body art, open the system and look at the system panel. I still have two chances to evolve now. It seems that I will evolve into one body. Thinking of this, Lee gradually narrowed his eyes. From the moment he obtained the infinite evolution system, Lee wanted to evolve his body. After all, own strength is king. With the help of other powers, after all, it's just a detour. However, in the past, Lee was not sure what the infinite evolution system would evolve into his body. Although they are all evolutionary, the evolutionary direction is different. For example, if the environment of this world has undergone tremendous changes, causing all human beings to evolve into skeletons, then skeletons will be the best body for that world. However, skeletons are not suitable for the current world environment. If Lee evolves into a skeleton, then, within a few seconds, the 3 generations of Hokage will take someone to destroy Lee. For another example, if the ground is no longer suitable for human survival, then it is possible for humans to evolve wings, which is also an evolutionary direction. However, if Lee Yi had evolved wings now, he would be Orochimaru's #1 research subject. By that time, Lee Yi will not be able to eat Kabuto and walk away. Lee Yi doesn't know what the infinite evolution system will evolve into, so he didn't rashly evolve his body when he evolved once before. But now, Lee Yi has 2 chances to evolve. Even if a strange product evolves for the first time, it will not be the same for the second time, right? His luck, Lee Yi, doesn't seem so bad, does it? Alas, evolution is not reinforcement. If it is reinforcement, it would be great. The essence will not change, but evolution will change the essence. Lee Yi sighed lightly. Evolution is not reinforcement. Strengthening does not change the essence. Evolution can change the essence. For example, Lee Yi evolved a wooden chopstick into a Dinghaishan needle. The chopsticks are made of wood, but the Dinghaishan needle is made of metal. This has changed in essence. Whether it is Darwin's theory of evolution, or the evolution theory of any well-known biologist, this can be proved. Evolution is a fundamental change. Alas, system. How good would it be if you called it an infinite enhancement system? Lee Yi complained, in his heart. Ding. Back to the host, if you dislike this system can unpair and bind with you. Lee Yi's mind immediately, without the slightest emotional fluctuation. Lee Yi heard this, he blinked, then sighed and shook his head. Forget it, something is better than nothing, you have to stay in my body. Ding. Go back to the host, the system has received it. The crisp voice resounded in my mind again. Lee Yi smiled. In fact, the infinite evolution system is also very good. At least it won't interfere with Lee Yi's affairs. When he was on Earth, Lee Yi had read many novels, and the male protagonists in these novels each had a powerful system. These systems seem to be awesome to coax out the sky, but when Lee Yi is reading novels, he always has a feeling that the host is not the host, but just a puppet of the system. He will do what the system asks him to do, and he will not do what the system does not let him do. No matter what he does, he will obey the system. The system's words are more effective than his mother's father's words. At that time, seeing this kind of plot, Lee Yi felt uncomfortable. Everyone is an independent individual. Since it is an independent individual, it must have independent consciousness and independent thinking. Why does everything listen to the system? Is everything the system says right? How do you know the system doesn't have a purpose? Why don't you think about why there are so many people in this world, why the system only chooses you and not others? Are you crazy? Are you special? Do you think you can fly up to the sky side by side with the sun? Because of this, Lee Yi has always been wary of the system after he obtained it. After all, there is no such thing as a pie in the sky. However, under the understanding of this period of time, Lee Yi found that his infinite evolutionary system would not interfere with his thoughts at all. Unless it's life-threatening or other emergencies, the system sleeps in his body and doesn't say a word. For this, Lee Yi is very satisfied. Moreover, Lee Yi has been a cautious person since childhood. He is not the kind of impulsive 250. Although he has a plug-in, before he fully understands the plug-in, or before he has absolute strength, he can never cause trouble everywhere. In this world, there are many dangers, and he may face danger to his life at any time. This world is a real world, and he has indeed come to the real world of Hokage. In this world, although only Lee Yi has a plug-in, Lee Yi does not feel that he is the protagonist, nor does he think that everyone in this world has to revolve around him. He always puts the mentality of a supporting role on himself, because he knows that only in this way can he live in peace and stability before he has absolute strength. Chapter 167-Confidence. Before you have great strength, you must first have a strong mentality. Otherwise, the old saying goes, if God wants you to perish, it must first make you crazy. Without a strong mentality, if you have a strong strength, you will perish sooner or later. Only with a strong mentality can you control the strong strength. Only when you control the strength, you will not be crazy. This sentence applies both on Earth and in this world. What the Earth looks at is money, and every rich boss has a very strong mentality before he has no money. Although the world looks at strength and fists, the same principle is true. In the original work, whether it is Uzumaki Naruto or Uchiha Sasuke, although their mentality is different, their mentality is very strong, so they can become stronger. Even Sakura wants to catch up with Naruto and Sasuke, and gradually becomes stronger with such a strong and stable mentality. All in all, Li Yi's mentality is already quite strong. He is ready. So, he wants to evolve his body. 2 evolution opportunities are enough. However, just when Li Yi was about to evolve his body, he suddenly frowned. Without the slightest hesitation, he moved directly to the right. A donkey rolled and rolled out. Swish! Almost at the same time, a huge water sword descended from the sky, like a broken bamboo, and crashed on the ground. With a loud bang, a large pit was directly blasted out of the earth, and the water sword also turned into a ball of water and fell into the pit, forming a small puddle. Just as Li Yi stood up, he saw that above the sky, hundreds of water swords fell from the sky, overwhelming the sky, and the water that surrounded him was impenetrable. Li Yi wanted to enter the door to hide, but the next moment, he gave up this idea. Because he wants to try the power of Kowloon Hegemony Body Art. Li Yi directly took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and slammed into the sky. Roar! At this moment, it seemed that there was a loud dragon roar, which sounded from Li Yi's right arm. Because Li Yi was wearing clothes, no one could see it. At this time, there was a bright golden light shining on Li Yi's right arm, making his entire right arm as if made of gilt. Boom! Punch! The space above Li Yi turned into a vacuum. All water swords exploded. No, it wasn't an explosion, it was vaporized in an instant. This power is not bad. Looking at his fist, Li Yi's eyes lit up. On the surface of his fist, there is a golden dragon shape. At this moment, this dragon shape is like a living thing, walking along Li Yi's skin. It looks extraordinarily spiritual. And Li Yi's punch just now was the strongest punch ever made by this dragon's blessing. A single water sword can leave a huge puddle on the hard ground. One can imagine the power of hundreds of water swords. But even so, all the water swords were evaporated in an instant. You can imagine how powerful Li Yi's punch was. He Fang Xiao Xiao, dare to attack me but dare not show up. How did your mother teach you to be a human being? Li Yi stood there, looked around, and cursed. This is Li Yi's home. Li Yi has been training here for more than a week. Li Yi knows all the flowers, trees, grass and stones here, and has touched them all. Here, even in the face of an elite Jonin, Li Yi has the confidence to escape. Therefore, Li Yi's arrogant attitude is not only because of his aggressiveness, but also because of his confidence. Chapter 168-Battle. Hee, I really didn't see it. You are a little genin, since you still have such strength. A cold laughter sounded. Immediately afterwards, in front of Li Yi, a tall figure came towards him. You are. Li Yi frowned suddenly and asked, Sukazan Fuguki from the 7 Ninja Swordsmen. Oh, you know me. The tall man was obviously stunned for a moment, his footsteps also stopped, he touched his nose and smiled. I don't know myself, I actually did this. However, he hasn't finished speaking yet. Roar. The resounding sound of the dragon's roar suddenly came to mind from Li Yi's body. I saw Li Yi clenched his right fist, without the slightest fancy, and punched Sukazan Fuguki in the air. Boom. In an instant, the air exploded. Li Yi's eyes turned into a vacuum, without a trace of air. A wave of power invisible to the naked eye rushed towards Sukazan Fuguki. The purest power brought to Li Yi by Kowloon Hegemony. Sukazan Fuguki was stunned for a moment, and was obviously shocked. However, after all, he is also a man who has experienced many battles. The next moment, he did not hesitate at all, and directly pulled out the big knife behind him and slammed it on the ground with a bang. Almost at the same time, Lee Yi's surging power roared like a torrent and landed on Sukazan Fuguki's sword. Bang! With a muffled sound, a strong wind blew, and the bandages around the big knife broke inch by inch. A strange-looking broadsword came into view. The reason why this broadsword looks strange is because the broadsword is covered with dark blue barbs, and the barbs move as if they were alive. Above the hilt, there is a small horn wrapped around the man's arm. Watch the Hokage ninja knows that this sword, called the dagger shark muscle, is the dagger used by Kisame Hoshigaki. However, now, Kisame Hoshigaki has not been born yet. Now, the knife is in the hands of the man in front of him, Sukazan Fuguki. At the same time, Sukazan Fuguki looked up to the sky and laughed loudly, ha ha ha. It's useless. Your chakra will only be absorbed by my big sword shark muscle and eventually become my power. In front of me, any chakra, it's all useless. What? Suddenly, Sukazan Fuguki's tone changed suddenly. Because he found that the big sword shark muscle couldn't absorb the invisible chakra in front of him. So, along with the violent trembling of the barbs on the shark's muscles, Sukazan Fuguki's feet also rubbed the ground and involuntarily swiped towards the rear. However, Sukazan Fuguki is not a weakling after all, so after just sliding for more than 1 meter, he stabilized his body and swung his sword violently, breaking the invisible force in front of him. Sukazan Fuguki laughed and said, I didn't expect your power to be so great. It seems that you were able to escape from the hands of our 7 brothers at that time. You are indeed rich. However, before the word, Ben, could be uttered, Sukazan Fuguki's voice suddenly stopped. Because. What about people? Sukazan Fuguki immediately glanced around. That's right, Lee Yi has disappeared. Huh. Suddenly, Sukazan Fuguki's face changed. Without any hesitation, his body immediately jumped up. At the same time, he waved his big sword shark muscle and slammed it down. I saw that Lee Yi actually got out of the ground from the ground under his feet and punched Sukazan Fuguki with an uppercut. Sukazan Fuguki responded in time, his right foot was still touched by Lee Yi. Off topic, the world is a respiratory doctor, and now the love is not over, so I can't update too much for the time being, I hope you understand. Chapter 169 _ Awareness. Lee Yi's right fist touched Sukazan Fuguki's right foot. At the same time, Sukazan Fuguki, holding the big sword shark muscle in his hand, whistled towards Lee Yi's face. Lee Yi immediately raised his left arm, with golden light flickering on his arm, and with the resounding sound of the dragon, the entire right arm became as if made of gilt. The next moment, the big sword shark muscle landed on Lee Yi's arm with the strength like a mad cow. Bang! With a muffled sound, Lee Yi's body was directly knocked out. And Sukazan Fuguki was also affected by the power of Lee Yi's right fist, and spun 3 or 4 somersaults in the sky, and finally landed firmly. Lee Yi was knocked flying. He didn't fall down. Instead, he paddled on the ground with both feet and painted 2 long marks on the ground. Finally, he slipped out 7 or 8 meters, and only then did he barely stabilize his body. Even under the blessing of Kowloon hegemony body art, Lee Yi's left hand has a slight numbness. One can imagine how powerful the power of Sukazan Fuguki's knife is. Lee Yi shook his hand to eliminate the numbness. At this time, Sukazan Fuguki also noticed that Lee Yi was difficult to deal with, and without any hesitation, he immediately hand-sealed with both hands, and the mist spewed out of his mouth. In an instant, the sky and the earth with a radius of several hundred meters were shrouded in white mist, and the 5 fingers could not be seen. Does it block the line of sight? Seeing this scene, Lee Yi understood the other party's intention at that time. Almost at the same time, the big sword shark muscle whistled from behind, tore through the white fog, and smashed into the back of Lee Yi's head with an overwhelming force. However, just at the critical moment, an oval door suddenly appeared in the ground below Lee, and then, his body fell. Sukazan Fuguki was right behind Lee. Seeing Lee falling to the ground, he did not hesitate at all. He roared and forced to turn his knife. The big knife that was originally a horizontal split instantly turned into a vertical one, and moved towards Lee's Tianling cover. Chop away. However, the big knife fell fast, and Lee's body fell faster. When Lee's entire body disappeared, the big sword shark muscle fell heavily on the ground. Boom! With a huge explosion, a huge pit appeared instantly, the wind whistled out along with the sand, and even the surrounding white fog was blown away abruptly. Sukazan Fuguki didn't feel like he had hit anyone, he knew that his knife was still in vain after all. This kid really knows the troublesome ninjutsu of time and space. If I knew this, when I was in the country of rain, I should kill him at all costs. Sukazan Fuguki's face has become extremely gloomy and regretful. However, he also knew that time and space were difficult and terrifying. Therefore, without any hesitation, he directly hand-sealed with both hands, and there was a burst of bang 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 explosions, and there appeared one after another clones around him. Immediately afterwards, Sukazan Fuguki's main body, together with these clones, flew out in different directions. He did this for only one purpose, that is, to confuse Lee's vision. Time and space ninjutsu is really difficult, because I don't know where the enemy will appear next moment, whether it will appear behind, on top of, or under my feet. Can't say for sure. Therefore, Sukazan Fuguki will separate dozens of clones. I don't know where you will appear, but you also don't know who is the real me. I have to say that Sukazan Fuguki is worthy of being the elite Jonin of the Land of Rain. This kind of adaptable and strong fighting consciousness is indeed not comparable to ordinary people. Digression. After the end of Ye Love, the world will be able to have more every day. Not only is the world busy recently, but the plot also involves a huge turning point for the male protagonist. Therefore, the world must grind the outline well, and I hope all readers understand. Chapter 170-Prevail. In the fog. Dozens of Sukazan Fuguki stood on the ground, looking around together. No one knows which Sukazan Fuguki is the real one. And Sukazan Fuguki's plan is also very simple, just wait and see. As long as you come out and don't find my body, then I can catch your flaws and destroy them with one move. I have to say that Sukazan Fuguki's fighting consciousness is indeed very strong, and he deserves to be one of the 7 ninja swordsmen in the Land of Water. Sukazan Fuguki's mouth, there is a slight arc, as if it is the carnival of the winner. Come out. As long as you come out, I can kill you. Ha ha ha, come out faster. However, before the smile on Sukazan Fuguki's face disappeared, it suddenly solidified. Because he felt his ankles being grabbed by a pair of big hands. Quickly looked down. Saw Lee's hands stretched out from under the ground, grabbed his ankles, and pulled him down to the ground. Because Lee appeared too suddenly, Sukazan Fuguki didn't react at all. The next moment, his body below his neck was pulled under the ground. By the time he reacted, Lee's hands had disappeared. Immediately after. Boom. A huge pressure, from all directions, squeezed Sukazan Fuguki's body. That is the earth. The earth confines Sukazan Fuguki's body. Sukazan Fuguki's face was shocked, and his heart was horrified. What kind of ninjutsu is this? Lee suddenly appeared, directly selected the main body, and pulled him into the ground. During this process, he did not feel any obstacle, as if he was not pulled into the ground, but into the air. However, when Lee's hands disappeared, he felt his body slammed into the ground, and his whole body seemed to be crushed by the ground, struggling to move. Sukazan Fuguki hadn't figured it out yet. Lee's body, like a ghost, emerged out of thin air from under the ground in front of him. Without the slightest mercy, I kicked Sukazan Fuguki in the nose. Crack! With a crisp sound of bone cracking, Sukazan Fuguki's nose was kicked off. Nosebleeds flowed down like two torrents. Ah! Sukazan Fuguki cried out in pain. His face became extremely ferocious, and shouted loudly, "Boy, you are courting death." However, just after he finished scolding, Lee Yi kicked Sukazan Fuguki's right eye again. Lee Yi wants to make him blind. An instant, a layer of cold sweat broke out on Sukazan Fuguki's back. The world says that human potential is infinite. This sentence is indeed correct. At the critical moment, Sukazan Fuguki suddenly roared with strength from nowhere, and his arms buried under the ground smashed the ground and stretched out to block his eyes. Lee Yi's right foot whizzed along. Bang! With a muffled sound, Sukazan Fuguki's palm was kicked, and the back of his hand slammed into his eyes. In an instant, his right eye was swollen. Fortunately, he is fat and has a lot of flesh on the back of his hands. Otherwise, his punch might directly blow his eyes. Oh! Lee Yi was also surprised. He didn't expect that Sukazan Fuguki's body below his neck was buried under the ground, and he could still break free. However, Lee Yi's action, without any hesitation, was another kick. This kick, Lee Yi directly kicked Sukazan Fuguki's temple. He's going to kick the opponent to death. Chapter 171 Lee Yi's Plan. Sukazan Fuguki's face changed greatly, and he immediately hand-sealed with both hands and shouted, "Water formation wall." Whoa! Opened his mouth and spit it out, and a wave of water spewed out from his mouth, turning into a huge water barrier in front of Sukazan Fuguki. Lee Yi kicked on the water. Because the water flow was too turbulent, it was as sharp as a knife, so Lee Yi's body was directly bounced out, and he took 5 or 6 steps back to stabilize his body. At the same time, Sukazan Fuguki clenched the big sword shark muscle with both hands and slammed into the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, the ground around Sukazan Fuguki shattered. And he roared again, and his body jumped out of the deep pit. Across the water barrier, Sukazan Fuguki's face was already gloomy like a dark cloud. He stared at Lee Yi and said, "Boy, you are dead." Hearing such a threat, Lee Yi was not afraid, but asked with a slight smile, "Do you know why I didn't kick your dead end when I first started?" Huh. Sukazan Fuguki frowned slightly. Years of fighting made him feel something was wrong. Lee Yi continued, "Because of doing that, this battle will become meaningless." Sukazan Fuguki was slightly taken aback. But the next moment, his face suddenly became angry, and he shouted, "Arrogance. Your arrogance will become the biggest reason for your failure." Sukazan Fuguki jumped up and jumped straight into the air. At the same time, he clenched the big sword shark muscle with both hands and slashed towards Lee Yi. "Boy, don't run if you can." Sukazan Fuguki roared loudly using the jigsaw technique. He knew that Lee Yi's time and space ability was very difficult to deal with. If Lee Yi wanted to run, he would not be able to catch him. That's why he used such a low-level aggressive method. Lee Yi smiled disdainfully. "I didn't want to run from the beginning." Finished speaking, Lee Yi clenched his right hand abruptly, and there was a golden dragon surging on the surface of his fist. The next moment, with a loud dragon roar, Lee Yi's fist slammed towards both sides. At the same time, the big sword shark muscle descended from the sky with a huge force. Both sides collide. Boom! Immediately, the 10-meter space turned into a vacuum. Lee Yi shattered directly. Sukazan Fuguki's pupils shrink slightly. In his eyes, Lee Yi's right arm was now shrouded in a looming golden creature, and the arm and the golden creature overlapped each other, looking quite domineering. This golden creature roared and burst out with enormous power, which was no weaker than the power of his great sword that fell from the sky. The end, Lee Yi's legs bent sharply, and Sukazan Fuguki was also subjected to the reaction force. His body turned a somersault in the sky, and retreated towards the rear. But at this moment, Lee Yi grinned, stretched out his right hand, and grabbed it forward. Lee Yi's right arm is only 60 to 70 centimeters. And Sukazan Fuguki is 3 or 4 meters away from Lee Yi. However, just as Lee Yi stretched out his right hand, he touched Sukazan Fuguki's face. His right hand directly penetrated the space. Sukazan Fuguki's face was shocked, and he hurriedly slapped his left face like a mosquito. However, almost at the same time, Lee Yi's right hand disappeared out of thin air. Therefore, Sukazan Fuguki's big hand fell on his face mercilessly. Crack! With a loud bang, Sukazan Fuguki was knocked to the ground by himself, and a big Kiba was knocked out. Kiba grinned and gasped in pain. Chapter 172-Mighty Door Fruit. Regardless of the pain, Sukazan Fuguki hurried back, 8 or 9 meters away from Lee Yi. Looking at Sukazan Fuguki from a distance, Lee Yi stood there, smiled contemptuously, and stretched out his right hand again. His right arm is only 60 to 70 centimeters. However, as soon as he stretched out his right hand, he directly patted Sukazan Fuguki on the shoulder. Sukazan Fuguki was shocked and hurried to dodge. However, the next moment, Lee Yi's right hand stretched out from the void and touched his neck. After 3 or 4 minutes, Sukazan Fuguki's whole body was almost touched by Lee Yi. Not including that secret place, of course. Lee Yi is obsessed with cleanliness. Sukazan Fuguki's mentality has collapsed. He didn't even know where Lee Yi's right hand would appear. As this time-space ninjutsu. It's so weird. On Sukazan Fuguki's forehead, a trace of cold sweat has already appeared. To be honest, he has a hint of retreat now. He didn't want to entangle with Lee Yi anymore. Because he knew that if it continued like this, he would definitely lose. That's right, he, the elite Jonin, will lose to a genin. Therefore, without the slightest hesitation, Sukazan Fuguki turned sharply and ran towards the distance. He's going to run. Lee Yi smiled disdainfully and said, "Can you run away?" After finishing speaking, Lee Yi directly separated from the air and slapped out. Crack! With a loud bang, Sukazan Fuguki was slapped on the ground at a distance of 20 or 30 meters away. Sukazan Fuguki is finally scared. What kind of weird ability is this? Too terrifying. It's so scary. I am not his opponent. If I stay here any longer, I will surely die. Sukazan Fuguki staggered to his feet. He didn't even need his big sword shark muscles. He didn't turn his head, and ran away into the distance. He was terrified. And when Sukazan Fuguki disappeared from sight, Lee Yi also plopped and sat on the ground. His breathing was panting, and there was a pea-sized sweat flowing out from his forehead. Obviously, the excessive use of the power of the door fruit made him collapse. Especially just now, he was 20 to 30 meters away from Sukazan Fuguki, and he could slap him to the ground with a slap. This time, half of Lee Yi's stamina was directly consumed. However, even so, there was a satisfied smile on the corner of Lee Yi's mouth. He looked at his hands and muttered to himself, "As my physical strength grows, the abilities of the door fruits finally begin to manifest one by one." In the original, Hokage, there are 2 very powerful time and space ninjutsu. One is Kamui by Obito. The other is the technique of Hiraishin created by the 2nd generation of Hokage and surpassed by the 4th generation of Hokage. Hiraishin, which is the technique of teleportation, requires a mark to teleport. As long as there is a marker, the user will teleport next to it, and the positioning is extremely precise. Kamui does not have the precise teleportation positioning of Hiraishin's art, and can only move to a general place in space, but it can bring a part of the body or the whole body into time and space to avoid it. It can only be said that these 2 time-space ninjutsu have their own advantages and disadvantages. However, Lee Yi's door fruit is the combination of the advantages of these 2 great time and space ninjutsu. Not only does it have accurate teleportation positioning, but it can also enter time and space to avoid it. Inheriting the advantages of the 2 major time-space ninjutsu, and abandoning the shortcomings of the 2 major time-space ninjutsu, this is the fruit of the door. One can imagine how powerful the door fruit is. Chapter 173 Big Sword Shark Muscle. A full 10 minutes of rest. Li Yi finally stopped sweating. He stood up from the ground and stretched. At this moment, the fire of self-confidence in his heart was finally ignited. Tsukazan Fubuki, the dignified elite jonin, has also been pushed back by him. More importantly, from now on, he will be able to lock Tsukazan Fubuki's position at all times. That is to say, when Tsukazan Fubuki is sleeping or practicing, he can appear silently and kill him. In other words, Li Yi didn't push Tsukazan Fubuki back, but he killed him. With genin, killing, the elite jonin, what a feat. Of course, the reason why Tsukazan Fubuki failed was also because he didn't know the details of Li Yi. If he understands the details of Li Yi, then Li Yi is not his opponent at all. Li Yi reflected on the battle just now. In the battle just now, the Nine Dragons Tyrant body art was about to reach its limit, and once it reached the limit, he would no longer be able to use it. Not only that, Li Yi's stamina was also consumed by more than half. If he continued to delay, then of course Tsukazan Fubuki would lose, but not so badly. Therefore, the main reason for Li Yi's great victory is because Tsukazan Fubuki doesn't know him. Li Yi thought for a while, if the other party knew all the details of Li Yi, then he would be able to tie with a special jonin. Facing the elite jonin, Li Yi can only run away. Pity that Tsukazan Fubuki will never see this scene again. After all, Li Yi has touched every place on his body. Huh. Suddenly, Li Yi's eyes narrowed. Because he saw a wriggling broadsword. Big knife shark muscle. This is good stuff. Li Yi's eyes lit up. Without the slightest hesitation, he ran forward and picked up the big sword shark muscle. You know, in the original work of Hokage, the main reason why Kisame Hoshigaki can be called a tailless beast by many Hokage fans is because of this big sword. The big sword shark muscle can not only absorb chakra, but also transport chakra into the user's body. The premise is that the big sword muscle likes this user. If it doesn't like the user, then it's a useless thing. And now, the big sword shark muscle doesn't seem to like Li Yi. Li Yi was holding the big sword shark muscle. The head on the tail of the big sword shark muscle did not wrap around Li Yi's arm, but was drooping, with a stunned look. You know, if the big sword shark muscle likes the user, then it will wrap around the user's wrist. Just like it did to Tsukazan Fubuki. Li Yi smiled. Don't like me. Looking at the slightly wriggling dark blue barb on the blade of the big sword, a golden light suddenly flashed across Li Yi's eyes. Immediately after. Roar. The loud dragon's roar sounded from Li Yi's body, echoing between the heaven and the earth. Li Yi's heavenly spirit covered it, and a golden dragon slowly appeared, with its head emerging, and uttering a roar that shook the heavens and the earth. Roar. The big sword shark muscle was so frightened that the barbs all over the body stood up. But even so, it didn't wrap around Li Yi's wrist. Not yet convinced. Li Yi smiled. The next moment, his mind moved suddenly. Roar. With a monstrous dragon roar, the golden dragon flew out directly from Li Yi's body. Zhang Qiba danced his claws, and swallowed the big sword shark muscle into his mouth in one bite. Chapter 174 Evolve the Body. In an instant, all the barbs on the surface of the big sword shark muscle stood up. At this moment, it seemed that there was a layer of golden quilt covering the entire surface of the dagger muscle. The previous big sword shark muscle was originally a slap in the face, and it looked like he didn't want to pay attention to Li Yi. However, at this moment, the head of the big sword shark directly wrapped around Li Yi's wrist. Immediately afterwards, Li Yi felt a soft water-like force pouring into his body, making him feel refreshed. Li Yi's eyes lit up. Is this chakra? The shark muscle can absorb chakra and transmit chakra to the person you like. Before, the big sword shark muscle has been absorbing the chakra of Tsukazan Fubuki. Tsukazan Fubuki is a ninja of the water attribute, and the chakra in the body belongs to the water attribute. And now, the chakra delivered by the big sword shark muscle to the Liyi mountain is the water attribute chakra of Sukazan Fubuki. The next moment, the golden light on the surface of the big sword shark muscle disappeared, and the head of the big sword shark muscle was still wrapped around Liyi's wrist, not relaxing at all. Obviously, the big sword shark muscle is cowardly. It recognizes Liyi as the master. Liyi smiled in satisfaction, touched the dark blue barbs on the surface of the shark's muscle, and joked, "Obvious children have candy." Liyi found a bandage and retied the big sword shark muscle. After all, the appearance of the big sword shark muscle is really too strange. If it is carried on the body like this, no matter where Liyi goes, it will become the focus of everyone's attention. He didn't want that. Okay, let's start evolving. Liyi stretched his waist, and the light in his eyes flickered slightly. He wanted to evolve his body before, but unexpectedly, Sukazan Fubuki suddenly attacked. Now, since Sukazan Fubuki has been forced out, let's start to evolve. System. Liyi immediately shouted in his heart. What's the host's order? The crisp sound of the system immediately sounded in Liyi's mind. I'm going to evolve my body. Liyi replied in his heart. Hello host, before you evolve your body, the system must remind you that the direction of evolution is uncertain. Your evolution may not be suitable for the current living environment. Do you want to evolve? For the first time, the system did not directly execute Liyi's order, but asked. Liyi asked directly, evolving the body, will I die? Answer the host, generally not. The system replied. Then evolve. Liyi orders. Ding. Consume one evolution ability and start evolving. Ding. Evolution succeeded. Swish. The series of voices from the system resounded in Liyi's mind. With the flash of golden light, Liyi only felt his body cool, and then, the golden light disappeared, and the cold feeling in Liyi's body also disappeared. Liyi blinked and asked in his heart, System, where did I evolve? Answer the host, your body has evolved. The crisp sound of the system rang in my ears. That's right, not in my head, but in my ears. Of course I know my body. Liyi said angrily, then looked down at his body. But the next moment, Liyi jumped up in fright. Because he saw that his own flesh and blood was gone, and his body. His mother's turned into a white skeleton. I rely on. Liyi, who has always been gentle and refined, also uttered a foul language. What the hell is this? Answer to the host, after 1,000 years, due to changes in the Earth's environment, the human body has evolved. Blood and flesh no longer conform to the environment of the times, only skeletons are left, no need to eat, drink, and lhasa. Moreover, even with skeletons, the 5 senses still exist. So you don't have to worry about. Don't worry about shit. Liyi directly scolded. Give Laosu another evolution. Digression. Starting from the next chapter, the male protagonist will start a journey against the sky. Chapter 175-Devour Gods. Ding. Consume one evolution ability and start evolving. Ding. Evolution succeeded. The crisp sound of the system rang in Lin Chen's ears again. Almost at the same time, Lin Chen suddenly felt his body heat up. But the next moment, this uncomfortable feeling disappeared. Lin Chen immediately looked down. Immediately relieved. Because his flesh and blood has grown back. Fortunately, there are no skeletons anymore. Otherwise, with the temperament of the 3 generations of Hokage, I will definitely send an army to kill me. Lin Chen secretly rejoiced in his heart. In fact, Sukazan Fubuki came at just the right time. The white fog he spit out has not dissipated yet. This white fog can block both sight and perception. Therefore, just now, the few seconds Lin Chen turned into a skeleton must not have been discovered. If someone finds out, it might bring him some unnecessary trouble. Therefore, the arrival of Sukazan Fubuki also indirectly helped him. However, Lin Chen didn't think too much, but asked directly in his heart, System, what did you evolve my body into? When saying this, Lin Chen involuntarily raised his right hand and touched his head. Finding that the hair on the top of his head was still there, Lin Chen breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the body is still there, as long as it's not bald, that's fine. After all, Lin Chen has always been confident in his appearance. If he suddenly becomes bald, he may not be able to accept this fact for a long time to come. The crisp voice of the system immediately sounded in Lin Chen's mind. Answer to the host, after 2 evolutions, your body has evolved to 3 Eternals, and now it is a devouring body. Devouring the divine body. Lin Chen was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed. What a domineering name. Listening to this name, it feels like a physique that is so awesome. Therefore, Lin Chen asked directly, what is the function of this devouring divine body? Is it possible to devour other people's blood for my own use? System replied, answer the host, you are right, and not only that, you can also devour other people's chakra for your own use. So arrogant. Lin Chen's eyes lit up. However, Lin Chen is a cautious person after all. Immediately afterwards, he frowned and asked, then, does this devouring divine body have any side effects? When he was on Earth, Lin Chen had read a lot of novels, and there were some awesome exercises that could devour other people's power and use them for himself. However, most of these exercises have side effects. And there are irreversible side effects. Lin Chen is not the kind of brainless idiot, so while rejoicing, he thought of this possibility. Are there any side effects? If so, how to resolve it? However, the next moment, the crisp sound of the system completely broke Lin Chen's concerns. Answer the host. Devouring the divine body does not have any side effects. You can devour all creatures, pigs, dogs, cows, sheep, monkeys, and even humans, inheriting their blood and power. Lin Chen's eyes lit up. I rely on. This devouring god body is simply awesome. Does that mean that in the future, Lao Su will not only have the blood lineage of the Uchiha family, but also the blood lineage of the Hyuga family, the Uzumaki family, the Inuzuka family, the Akamichi family, even the Otsutsuki family? All the blood following the boundaries in one. Gather the chakras of the whole world in one. Awesome. Thinking of this, Li Yi is very excited. Chapter 176-try. System, how exactly should it be swallowed? Li Yi asked. How to use the devouring divine body? The crisp voice of the system sounded in his mind immediately. Answer to the host, the use of the devouring divine body is very simple. You only need to put your palm on the body of the swallowed creature, and the swallowed creature must not have any resistance, so, just wait a quarter of an hour and you can swallow it successfully. Quote. In other words, you have to knock down the opponent or stun the opponent. Li Yi touched his chin and nodded, and then asked, so, what happens to the devoured after being swallowed? System replied, answer to the host, the swallowed creature will die, not only physically, but also completely shattered in the soul. The swallowed creature will never be reborn. The sound of the system is very crisp and sounds harmless to humans and animals. However, even with Li Yi's current temperament, after hearing this sentence, his hair stood on end. You can't live forever. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly, and a faint light flashed in those bright eyes. However, Li Yi is not a Madonna watch after all. The world is so cruel. If you want to become stronger, you have to step on other people's heads. Otherwise someone will step on your head. The law of the weak is always the law of this world. Therefore, even if the other party is not allowed to live forever, even if he bears such a monstrous sin, Li Yi will continue to do it. If you want to become stronger, you must do it. Our Lady of the Table cannot survive in this world at all. At this moment, the divine light in Li Yi's eyes became more and more firm. Another book in the world is called The Strongest Mad Emperor in History, and the male protagonist in the book is called Lin Chen, so the world may spell the name of the protagonist incorrectly. I hope you understand. Crash. Li Yi is a small river, very clear. Li Yi stood in the river, bent over, groping for something. I do not know how long it has been. Li Yi suddenly stood up, raised his hands, and held a turtle in his hands. Finally found. Li Yi grinned. According to the system, devouring the divine body can only be used once in 3 days, but this is the first time that Li Yi does not want to devour people. So, he decided to find a creature to try. And this creature is a turtle. In Li Yi's eyes, all power and speed are bullshit. The real power is defense. In the past, when he was on Earth, before Li Yi played games, he would charge up money or use plugins to fill up the character's defenses. When someone hits you, you can only lose 1 drop of your blood at most, and although your attack power is not high, you can slowly drain the opponent to death. This principle also applies in this cruel world. If you have a strong defense, then, even if you are attacked, don't be afraid. Anyway, the other party can't kill him, at most he suffers a little skin trauma, so what? Therefore, Li Yi set the target on the tortoise. Turtles are born with a strong defense, and its defense is its bloodline ability. System, I'll ask again, if I devour this turtle, I won't have a turtle shell, right? Li Yi asked again in his heart. System replied, answer the host, yes. That's fine. Li Yi breathed a sigh of relief. According to the system, the devouring divine body will only inherit the power of the excellent bloodline, not the inferior bloodline power. Moreover, the devouring divine body will also change the power of the bloodline according to the physical characteristics of the user. Therefore, Li Yi no longer grumbles. When the tortoise came out, he knocked its head dizzy. Then, Li Yi took a deep breath and held the turtle's head. Devour. Begin. Chapter 177_ was attacked. To be honest, before swallowing the tortoise, Li Yi was really worried about whether he would grow a turtle shell. He didn't want to live with a tortoise shell on his back. However, after a quarter of an hour, that is, after about 15 minutes, his concerns completely disappeared. Li Yi's hand was gone. It has been devoured by Li Yi. Li Yi glanced at his body. Nothing has changed. Whether it is skin, hair, flesh and blood, it is exactly the same as before, and nothing has changed. Li Yi looked down at the water again. Water's surface was like a mirror, reflecting the appearance of Li Yi's face. However, the face did not change. Li Yi immediately asked the system in his heart, System, what have I changed? Answer the host, inheriting the power of the bloodline of the turtle, your bloodline has changed. The system replied. Li Yi flipped a Byakugan. Nonsense. Of course, Lao Su knew that Lao Su's blood had changed. Do you still need to say that? I want to ask, where has the external appearance changed? However, before Li Yi continued to ask, all of a sudden, 3 bursts of shoo 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 came from above the sky. Li Yi's face changed, and he immediately looked up. I saw 3 black kunai fell from the sky, turned into 3 black streamers, and shot directly at Li Yi. Without any hesitation, Li Yi immediately retreated to avoid. But he forgot that he was not on land now, but in water. The resistance of the water affected his judgment. Originally, on land, Li Yi's retreat could make him retreat 3 or 4 meters in less than a second. But now, not only did Li Yi not step back 3 or 4 meters, but it took more than a second. That's why. Not good. Li Yi's face changed. He wanted to use the door fruit, but it was too late. Swish. The first kunai did not fall on Li Yi's body, but in the bottom of the water in front of Li Yi's feet. Swish. The second kunai did not fall on Li Yi's body, but was inserted into Li Yi's shoe. But the third kunai. Swish. It pierced directly into Li Yi's shoulder. Hi. Li Yi took a deep breath. It hurts. Suddenly, Li Yi's expression froze again. Because he saw that on top of the third kunwu, an explosive symbol was written. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Yi pulled out the kunai directly, spat out a string of blood, and threw it forward. At the same time, Li Yi stepped back abruptly. When Kunai was 3 or 5 meters away from Li Yi, the explosion symbol flashed, and then it exploded. Boom. A loud bang. Blast. Li Yi was blown away directly. It turned 7 or 8 circles in the sky, and finally hit the ground with a bang. But in the next moment, Li Yideng jumped up, golden light flashed in his hand, and a needle-sized Rui gold hoop rod appeared out of thin air. His eyes have become extremely sharp, staring at the surroundings tightly. He, I didn't expect that you would not be penetrated by my kunai. A sneer sounded from the sky, with a hint of pride and 2 points of surprise. My kunai once penetrated the hearts of countless Jonins, but not your body. You are wearing a good suit. Armor. Li Yi narrowed his eyes sharply. The 3 kunai just now were really fast, so fast that he didn't react at all. It stands to reason that at that speed, his shoulders have been penetrated. However, now, he was only injured in flesh and blood. Just a little skin injury. Chapter 178-Lao Yin Ratio. There is an old saying that it takes 100 days to hurt your muscles and bones. Logically speaking, Li Yi's bones may be cut off if he hits this kunai. But, now, Li Yi just suffered a little skin trauma. No bones were hurt at all. Therefore, the other party will say, is Li Yi wearing armor? And still good armor. Otherwise, how could Li Yi be safe and sound? Li Yi was also slightly taken aback. But the next moment, he reacted, and then his face became happy. He knew that his devouring was successful. He successfully devoured the power of the bloodline of the turtle, and his skin became hard. Otherwise, he would not be able to resist the suffering just now. Devouring the divine body is so terrifying, and then it changes its physique. The next moment, there was a killing intent in Li Yi's eyes. The 3 kunai just now were not just a simple test, but they really wanted his life. If it wasn't for Li Yi's skin strengthening, his arms would be gone now. Who the hell is so cruel? Is he from the land of water again? Li Yi looked up. I saw a man in black standing across the river. His whole body was shrouded in mist, making it impossible for people to see his true face. Only through his silhouette, he could tell that it was a man. Are you from the land of water? Li Yi squinted his eyes and asked. However, the other party didn't answer Li Yi's question, but said directly, I don't like you, so I wanted to kill you, but I didn't expect you to be wearing armor, which is a bit beyond my expectations. If you don't answer my question, that's the default. Li Yi said coldly, what the hell is your country of water trying to do? I sent Sukazan Fubuki to attack me before, and then I sent you to attack me. I don't seem to provoke your country of water, do I? I said, I want to kill if I want to kill, it's just that I don't like you, there is no other reason, don't think too much. However, before he could finish speaking, he suddenly saw a golden needle shot through. Swish. He didn't come back to his senses at all, his forehead was already penetrated by the golden needle. The source of the golden needle is Li Yi's palm. Dinghai Shenzhen. Li Yi is an old yin ratio. On the surface, he is talking to the other party, but in fact, it is just to distract the other party's attention, so as to successfully attack. And now, he has succeeded. However, Li Yi did not stop there, but moved his mind. Boom. The Dinghaishan needle suddenly became thicker. Before, the Dinghaishan needle was only 1 needle thin. However, in the blink of an eye, the Dinghaishan needle expanded to the size of a bucket. Boom, and the man's head was directly burst. Show no mercy. There will be no mercy in the face of the enemy. This is Li Yi's Dao. However, the scene where Yuhi's white things splashed all over the sky in his imagination did not appear. The man's head turned into a puddle of water, and then, his body also turned into a puddle of water and fell to the ground, flowing down the earth and into the river. What was blasted was just a water split. Li Yi didn't seem surprised, but narrowed his eyes slightly. If the opponent is so weak that he can't even dodge this blow, then the injury on his shoulder is the biggest mockery of him. Tisk tisk, you are really decisive. If I wasn't by the river now, I might be dead. A sneer sounded from the sky, with 1 point of pride and 2 points of anger, resounding between this world. Obviously, the other party really wanted to kill Li Yi. And Li Yi didn't hesitate at all, just. Chapter 179-Iron Walls. Li Yi's feet, an oval door suddenly appeared without warning, and Li Yi's body fell directly into the door and disappeared. Leave a sentence that echoes between the world. If you have the ability, come to the place where I exercise, and fight with me in an upright manner. However, if you don't have a seed, then there is no eunuch of XX, and we will see you in the future. What a vulgar language of tigers and wolves. Li Yi disappeared completely. Swish. A man in black, whose whole body was shrouded in mist, appeared where Li Yi stood before. He looked at the ground under his feet, smiled disdainfully, and said, "Hee hee, is it a way of agitation? Such an inferior way of agitation, you want to make me go too." After speaking, he suddenly raised his hands and quickly hand seal. The water in the river flows to the man's side, forming a body of water. "Go and fight that Konoha village ninja just now," said the man. "Okay." Shui nodded and ran into the distance. "Haha, this sneak attack, although I didn't kill that kid, but knowing that kid's chassis and methods, it's a big harvest." The man grinned, showing 2 neat rows of white kiba teeth. Then, the man's body turned into a puddle of water and disappeared in place. At the same time, in the training ground, Li Yi appeared out of thin air on the ground. Looking at the dry environment around him, Li Yi smiled. There was a stream in the place just now, and the opponent was a ninja from the land of water, so it was not a wise choice to fight the opponent there. And fighting the opponent in this dry place is a wise move. In fact, for Li Yi, it doesn't matter whether he kills the other party or not. After all, he has already verified the authenticity of devouring the divine body. After swallowing the bloodline power of a turtle, not only his skin has been hardened, but also the defensive talent in his genes has been enhanced. This is like a game. People with ordinary talent can only increase their defense value by a little after training for 2 or 3 days. For people with high talent, after a day of exercise, the rain resistance value can increase a little. That's what talent does. Humans do not have the defensive talents of turtles. However, Li Yi has now devoured the tortoise's defensive talent, so for the next 3 days, he will carry out high-intensity combat training to improve his body's defensive performance. Li Yi is confident that after 3 days, his body's defense will be greatly increased. Just like the sharp and powerful dagger just now, it can pierce his skin and flesh now, but, 3 days later, if it comes again, Li Yi is confident that it will only pierce a layer of skin. When he thinks of his own skin and the opportunity to become the hardest iron wall in the world, Li Yi is looking forward to it. Devouring the divine body can only be used once in 3 days. Then, after 3 days, what should I devour, whether to devour humans or continue to devour animals? Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking in his heart. However, just as Li was thinking about it, suddenly, he heard footsteps coming from behind him. Immediately retracting his thoughts, he turned his head to look. However, he saw a figure whose whole body was covered in white mist, making it impossible to see his true face, and slowly walked over. "Is it really here?" Li Yi frowned slightly. The environment here is very dry and not suitable for the opponent's combat, but even so, the opponent is still here. Interesting. However, Li Yi didn't talk nonsense to him either. He just stepped forward and ran towards him. "You can read my other book, The Strongest Crazy Emperor in History. You can read another book in the world, The Most Crazy Emperor in History. You can read another book in the world, The Most Crazy Emperor in History, Strong Mad Emperor." After 3 or 4 minutes, Li Yi directly punched the opponent's head. Chapter 180 Did you fight someone? The other party turned into a puddle of water and fell on the ground. "Hey, Is it another water body? Looking at the water on the ground, Li Yi smiled disdainfully. Although I don't know the identity of the opponent, but looking at the opponent's strength, speed and attack methods, Li Yi can be sure that the opponent should be a Jonin. What is the water country going to do? Or, what is Sarutobi Hiruzen going to do? The water country has already been in trouble in Konoha village, and he doesn't care. What is he going to do? Li Yi frowned slightly, feeling a little dissatisfied with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Of course, what does it have to do with him whether others live or die? Therefore, Li Yi did not think too much. He squatted and looked at the water on the ground. If this pool of water was transformed by the ninja's chakra, then, with this pool of water, Li Yi might be able to lock the opponent's position. However, what disappointed Li Yi was that this pool of water was not transformed by the opponent's chakra, but the water in that stream. Li Yi sighed and shook his head. It seems that the other party is not a fool. I thought he would use his own chakra to attack me. It seems that he felt that he couldn't kill me, so he used the stream to condense into a water body and used it to perfunctory me. Li Yi said in his heart. Suddenly, Li Yi's eyes narrowed. Because he saw a few ants beside the pool of water on the ground. These ants were originally walking well on the ground, but the water body was blown up by Li Yi's punch, turned into a puddle of water, fell from the sky, and drowned them. However, they did not die like this, but they used strength several times greater than their own bodies to forcibly swim to the ground. In the end, the ants all survived. Li Yi squatted on the ground and looked at it like this. When he saw that these ants were all returning to the land, 2 rays of light burst out in his eyes. The next thing to devour. Li Yi's left fist slammed into the palm of his right hand with a look of surprise on his face. But at this moment, a gentle voice suddenly came from behind Li Yi. Li Yi, what are you doing? Uchiha Makoto. Li Yi didn't turn around, he knew it was Uchiha Makoto and replied, look at the ants. What are the ants doing? A fragrant wind hit, Uchiha Makoto came to Li Yi's side, also squatting, put his right hand lightly on Li Yi's knee, and looked down at the ants on the ground. Li Yi glanced at Uchiha Makoto's small hand on his lap with a little deep meaning in his eyes. However, Uchiha Makoto's expression suddenly changed, and he stood up suddenly and asked, did you fight someone? Well, how should I put it? It's a fight, but it's not a fight. Li Yi touched his chin and said, while standing up slowly, under Uchiha Makoto's worried and solemn gaze, he continued, let's put it this way, there are 2 people who want my life, but both of them lost. No, this is my booty. Li Yi picked up the big sword shark muscle not far away and threw it to Uchiha Makoto. Is a special Jonin with a lot of knowledge, how could he not know the knife, big sword shark muscle? Immediately, Uchiha Makoto couldn't sit still, his left hand held the big sword shark muscle, and his right hand directly grabbed Li Yi's hand and took him away. Where? Li Yi blinked. Uchiha Makoto's pretty face, and he said angrily, go find Hokage-sama.